Vanakkam, Namaste, and blessings to everyone. This is Dr. Bhairavi Balasubramanian, PhD, the Sky Priestess. Today's video is a real political and spiritual rant. So you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. You're going to like me even more or you're going to run away. That's up to you. But I just need to vent. So I'm going to vent. Now, as you know, I'm in the United States. This is not my first time in the US. I studied politics here, one part of my journey, and I left because I didn't like the racial politics. So I come back, how many years later was it? 14 years later, 13 years later, and I find that some changes happen, more people are more aware, and there's also old BS in new bottles. Though at that time I was just viewing this as a student, as a academic in training, now I view this as a spiritual practitioner alongside all things. This cultural appropriation business is real. Trying to deny that it's there is not going to help anybody. I've been sharing articles for the past few days on how yoga has been culturally appropriated, and so too other aspects and facets of Hindu practice. And I've been getting a wide range of responses. People who've done the research into this tradition and totally love it and have been initiated by people who have the lineage understand where I'm coming from. But there's also a lot of knee jerk responses from people who feel very uncomfortable at being called out at perpetuating what is basically a different form of colonial appropriation. And frankly, I'm at the stage in my life where I've given up a lot of different career prospects because it didn't align with my, personal politics, or I didn't feel like I was making a change or difference in the way I wanted to. And I've been doing this for a couple of years, and a lot of you follow me for my perspective on the world and spirituality. But I'm at the stage in my life where I go, I absolutely cannot, in my practice, condone supporting work that ultimately is going to reproduce historical, colonial, social, economic, and cultural forms of injustice. And that's why I need to make this video. So let's take a very direct example. Now, some of the people who've been commenting on the posts are very sincere. They're like, well, yoga helps me. It helps me heal my body. Can I not do it? Of course you can do it. But there is a difference between doing yoga as an exercise and owning a yoga studio to put in a statue of Ganesh or whichever god just to make the place look Indian. One is, hey, this is a great thing for my body, and the other is cultural appropriation. It's also the same thing as wearing a bindi or a dot on your forehead because it looks pretty. Yes, it might be pretty, but it means something to the people whose culture it is. So that doesn't mean that white people or non-Indian people shouldn't study yoga, shouldn't love yoga, shouldn't practice yoga. It's like, give it respect, man. I mean, I know some people who follow me are somehow still thinking that I'm all about the love, light, and healing thing. I'm about the healing, but I am not about the whitewashing. If we want to heal something, we have to go into the underbelly. This is what it's about right now. We need to bring out the parts that are uncomfortable, that are discordant, that make us really rethink and revisit what we want to do. Spirituality is not a game. It's not something that you just can, pick up like a fad and let go of. It's a way of life. It's why being a spiritual initiate took years of research, years of understanding, years of practice before you could ever teach anything. And in this age, especially with market capitalism doing what it does and people trying to commodify more and more and more, what we get is people who have not learned a tradition properly, who have not been initiated, who do not have the credentials to teach, essentially doing so. And it hurts an indigenous practitioner. I'm sorry, white people. Some of you are really wonderful, but you do not understand that pain. You do not understand the pain of having your culture stripped of its essence because it's somehow useful to someone else when you can dislocate it from what it originally was. I'm talking to you, and I'm sure the brown people are going, shit, what has gone wrong with her? Frankly, nothing. I'm in New York. New York is one of those places for me which really makes me speak my truth. And believe me, I have been very, very restrained on this subject. I see people who are trying to teach me Indian politics and history, and they haven't even learned it. They don't want to look at sources that actually make them think about the claims that they are making. And they certainly don't want to hear an indigenous scholar, and believe me, I have references to the moon and back, who have done this research. What we think we know about a different culture just because we see it written on the internet somewhere. And I'm not asking you to take my claims at face value. Do the research for yourselves. If you're really interested in India, if you love India and want to understand how its political identity, how its spiritual practices were formed, go and look up the subaltern schools of Indian historiography. Those people have done decades of research. And when someone with that background looks at the way something as sacred as a religion or as yoga is marketed, commercialized, and stripped, you are going to be very, very certain of one. You can be certain of one thing: we will be pissed off. I'm sorry, but love and light and healing is not going to stop these processes and these practices from happening. People need to speak out against it. Now, that's not to say that all white people who do yoga don't know this. Some of them do. There's this beautiful article that this woman wrote and sent me, and she loves it. She loves it so much she's willing to critique and alienate people from her own cultural community who do not see it with the same respect. So I don't know, man. Maybe it's just the skies talking, or maybe it's just me. I feel that for what I stand for, I need to basically be very, very clear, as I've written on my blog, or well, not my blog actually, on my Facebook for the past couple of days. If you want to use a spiritual tradition to further your own self-understanding, there's nothing wrong with that. If you like yoga, if you like Reiki, if you like this, if you like that, there's nothing wrong with it. But there is an issue when you put yourself as a practitioner or as a teacher and try to reinvent the cultures in ways that support your life and business and practice. It's not about reinvention. I mean, I was furious when I went into a yoga studio the other day and I saw this happening. I mean, it's not to say that I haven't been aware of this when I've not been in the US, but when you are in the US, it is staring you in the face. And it's going to make people uncomfortable. And that is good. We need to get uncomfortable. We need to see where we are reproducing patterns of oppression, or patterns of accepting that your culture is something that you allow someone else to take away from you and dilute, that have happened for hundreds of years. And the same thing is happening again. Now, I am an elitist, for those of you who have not figured that one out yet. I like people who actually do the research. It's true, there's no point in denying it. Who do the research, who take the effort to actually learn about what they are talking about. Maybe you might think that makes me a snooty academic, but some people do that even without a degree. They just love a culture so much that they talk to the people that it comes from, that they reach out to the local community or representatives of that local community so that they get a deeper understanding. It's not about the academics, it's about the effort. I mean, I work with different traditions all the time, but I would never claim to lead a class or to teach something that isn't mine. See what I'm getting at? Like, it's like the Manhattan Project. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. And the fact that a lot of practitioners are doing things that they really shouldn't be doing has been one of the biggest contributing factors to A, why so many people in the spiritual community are effed up, and B, why so many people are in need of as serious and as deep healing as they do. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to come across a young man that I ended up mentoring for a little bit because he was truly in search of something. And there's nothing wrong to be in search of something. But he just didn't do the practices of being grounded, of taking the time to actually know what you are engaging with, of actually doing the research and background to say, this thing comes from this tradition. That came in this socio-economic or cultural time. This practice has these consequences. That takes time. That takes effort. And that is why spirituality is a way of life. It is not instant enlightenment. It's not something that you can buy at a cost. It is a daily search, minute to minute, moment to moment, millisecond to millisecond. That's probably why in ancient times spiritualists were seen as the others of the community because they couldn't live the normal day-to-day lives that other people lived. Now, I don't, those of you who've been following me, you know what I'm like. I don't do this for popular approval ratings. And frankly, I don't care if people want to see me as an angry Indian woman because I am angry. The universe is not made up of light and fluff, honey bunches. It is also about destruction, and we need to look at those practices and those ideas that need to be deconstructed so that we can actually get to something that is more authentic and that is more real for everyone to enjoy, for everyone to participate in. It's about honoring and recognizing. It's about doing the work, which is not just about looking at ourselves emotionally and grounding into our bodies, but taking that step further to do some of the intellectual work in understanding what a tradition is, where it has come from, what are the costs and consequences of using it, and who has the right to lead it and teach it. And that is something that I know a lot of people in the US would not like hearing. I have been invited to do so many things in California. I tried thinking organizing a prayer group, but each time I tried, I kept getting the message this isn't my land. I shouldn't be leading this. I shouldn't be doing this. Because California has its own particular historical complexity with the lands and the whole energy of unceded territory, that is a different issue. But I know I can work with the people there. I know I can work with the land there, but I do not have the right to do so. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And if that's the only take home message that you get from this, that is good enough because that alone will save so many people from some of the ill effects of going into spirituality in an ungrounded fashion, exploring traditions that they don't fully understand. There is an energetic cost when we do not do our research. Now, for those of you who are going to go for the we are one argument, let me put it this way. When we talk about issues such as appropriating the right to someone's physical integrity and sexual integrity, when we talk about the question of, well, no, this is my body, this is my image, this is me, you don't have the right to touch it. When we talk about those kinds of things, no one in their right mind raises the we are one argument. And everyone that I find is sane probably says, well, no, you have the right to protect your own body. You have the right to protect your own sexuality. This is yours. But when an indigenous practitioner raises the same issue, we are told that we need to be spiritually evolved enough to let go of our cultural identity and to see it being trampled. Don't you think this is very strange? It is very, very telling. And for those of you who remember your colonial history, you will see that this exact pattern and narrative has been carried out many times over. It is a different way of perpetuating privilege. In short, if you are uncertain, let an indigenous practitioner who is aware of their own roots and heritage answer questions for you than assuming that you already have them. And allow indigenous practitioners to actually lead the way in efforts on traditions which are truly theirs, unless you get permission from them to do so. Again, not a message everyone is gonna like, but it needs saying. So, take care, ciao ciao for now, and blessings to everyone. Bye.